Now, which are the clean animals? Moses wrote in Deuteronomy 14, verses 6 to 8, "You may eat every animal with cloven hooves, having the hoof split into two parts, and that chews the cud among the animals." So an animal must have two characteristics to be clean. It must have a split hoof like a cow and chew its cud. Now, what does chewing the cud mean? It means that the animal chews its food, swallows it, spits it up again, and chews it again, so the poisons and toxins are not absorbed into the flesh as easily. Some examples of clean animals are the cow, the sheep, the goat, and the deer. Now, these animals fit God's description as clean animals. What animals are unclean? What animals should we avoid according to the Bible? Moses continued, "Nevertheless, of those that chew the cud or have cloven hooves, you shall not eat such as these: the camel, the hare, the rock hyrax, for they chew the cud, but do not have cloven hooves. They are unclean for you." The camel. The Bible says, do not eat the camel. Though it chews its cud, it doesn't have a split hoof. Also the hare, in other words, a rabbit, and the rock hyrax. They chew the cud, but do not have cloven hooves. They are unclean for you. Let's continue. Also the swine is unclean for you, because it has cloven hooves, yet does not chew the cud. Going on, Moses said further in Deuteronomy 14, verse 8, "You shall not eat their flesh or touch their dead carcasses." Pigs. The Bible forbids that humans eat it. It is a scavenger. Its flesh is unclean as a food. But some people say, when Jesus died on the cross, all foods became acceptable. Well, first of all, my friend, Jesus did not die to cleanse pigs. Certainly not. Jesus came to cleanse you and me. If pig was unhealthy before the cross, it must be unhealthy after the cross. And here's a verse you should remember. The psalmist says in chapter 84, verse 11, "No good thing will he withhold from those who walk uprightly." Pork has the highest cholesterol source of all meats. If pork were good, God wouldn't hold it back from us. But since it's not good, he says, do not eat it. Now let's look at a few reasons. Dr. McNaught, who is a health researcher, found that 1 in every 4 pork specimens had living trichina larvae in it. Now, if you put an infected piece of pork under a microscope, you'll see the trichina larvae, which may have millions of little eggs. Those eggs hatch in your stomach, then invade your muscle tissue, causing serious symptoms like arthritis or rheumatism. Trichina are parasite worms, and trichinosis breaks out every now and again. Someone says, "Oh, but we cook it so hot that we kill them all." Now, does it give us more comfort to know that we're eating dead trichina larvae rather than live ones? Many cases of trichinosis that break out afflict people who thought they cooked their pork sufficiently. Another problem is that pig has very small kidneys, and because of this, its main organ that excretes a small amount of toxic waste is its skin. So the uric acid in the meat is exceptionally high and gives the meat its main taste. And this makes the meat extremely toxic and unfit for human consumption. Friend, I'd rather follow God, and I know you would too, wouldn't you? Now, we can learn to control our appetites. We can eat to live rather than live to eat. Philippians 3 verse 19 reads, "Whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who set their mind on earthly things." Many Christians do not understand the real issue. They love Jesus, but haven't seen that by having an attitude that says, "I don't care what you say, God, I'm going to eat what I want," they are really in rebellion and in very real danger. God is the God of the universe, and He invites you to give Him your body. Now, what about fish? Moses said in Deuteronomy 14 verses 9 and 10, "These you may eat. Of all that are in the waters, you may eat all that have fins and scales. And whatever does not have fins and scales, you shall not eat. It is unclean for you. If a fish has fins and scales, you may eat it, my friend. But if it's in the water, and it does not have fins and scales, such as crab, lobster, clams, in other words, scavengers, do not eat it, as these are high in toxic levels. Now, what about Peter's vision of the sheet with all the kinds of animals in it? In that vision, he saw rats, snakes, alligators, pigs, and a whole array of unclean things. And as the sheet descended from heaven, filled with unclean animals, Peter was given some startling instructions, and we read that in Acts 10, verses 13 and 14. And a voice came to him, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." Peter was confused. Did God really mean we should eat rats, pigs, crabs, and alligators? He couldn't understand this. But Peter said, "No, Lord, for I've never eaten anything common or unclean." Now, some preachers will try to tell you that this vision means you can eat anything you want to. That's certainly not how Peter understood it, and it is definitely not the context. Peter didn't eat these. In fact, he refused to eat. It is only when God explained the true meaning of the vision that he understood the vision. God was telling Peter that as a Jewish Christian, he should not consider the Gentiles to be unclean, but they too could be reached with the gospel. And Peter explained the meaning of the vision to the rest of the disciples this way in Acts chapter 10, verse 28. "But God has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean." So Peter fully understood the context of the vision. And Peter continues in verses 34 and 35, "In truth I perceive that God shows no partiality, but in every nation whoever fears him and works righteousness is accepted by him." So was this vision that we should eat pigs, snakes, and rats? Not at all. It was a vision about racial harmony. It was a vision that God has made of one blood all nations. It was a vision against prejudice between people of different backgrounds. This was not a vision allowing the consumption of unclean animals. God used unclean animals as only an illustration that Peter should accept all peoples of all races through Jesus Christ.